We are now thrilled to be joined again. This is a I guess recurring interview about this time of year by Buffalo Sabres coach Don Granato, coming off a solid 8-3 win over the Red Wings. Things going pretty well in Buffalo. Don, how are you? Thanks for doing this.
Good, thank you. Yeah, I'm glad to hear you're thrilled. That's not a word I've heard often. When
We're thrilled. I really say that for everyone. I'm not like, but I really am.
Right.
I mean, he says it. That's the way he like plays in every guest, and I can tell when he's lying. Like it's very clear when he's like not interested to talk to somebody. That's not the case today.
How was that one, John?
Was this a genuine thrilled?
Yeah, he's psyched. This is honest. Yes. He lies all the time. He lies about other people, not you.
Oh, all right, great, thanks. So
beware guests.
That's right. That's right. Beware by. Hey, we're thrilled again to be.
Yeah.
So, Don, there's so much to cover here with this team. I'm going to start with Tage Thompson because he's coming off this monster game against Detroit, and if you're just looking at the score sheet, seems like he's on track. But I imagine I think you even said at some point, was probably putting some pressure on himself early on. How long do you think it took for him to work that out?
Well, it was probably 1 week ago that we had media members asking, are you concerned with the slow start by him?
Yeah.
Are you concerned with him and even Jeff Skinner? And my answer was no. I don't think there's any reason to be concerned this early. These guys are not in. I mean, it's a fight to get into mid-season form, which is kind of a rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
They can't train for regular season games over the summer. They can train in the weight room. They can train their skills, but the regular season pace and teamwork and rhythm that you need to hit as a team, that's not coming for at least 10 to 20 games. And
right.
The habits that Tage has, the commitment, dedication that he has to getting to his game, you could see the work he put in, through training camp and the work he put in through practices in the early season. There was an inevitability to him scoring based on that with his talent, with his skill level. So, as long as we could do our part as coaches and keep him, upbeat, not second guessing himself and buying into anybody else's frustration, I thought we would be fine. And it's not his first time through challenges and adversity, as you guys know. He's got a lot of experience at hardship, even though he doesn't have a long NHL career yet, and he's proven to battle right through it. So this was minor for him.
I mean, last season we saw him make as drastic a jump as we've seen from any player in a long time. I mean, he was unbelievable. But how has he improved off of that? Like, what has he added to his bag over the summer? Like, how has he changed as a player, even from that serious change we saw in between?
I think what changes, the biggest and most impactful change, is reassurance that all the work you put in before you saw the rewards was accurate, right? Mm-hmm. It was worth it. Now if I think about, two players I had on the same team at the national team program were Tage Thompson. Well, I can name several, Austin Matthews, Matthew Tkachuk, Charlie McAvoy, Zach Werenski, all on the same team at the national team. They're in the same birth year.
Yep. And
the trajectory for, say, Austin Matthews or Matthew Tkachuk was, pretty much impact upon entry to the NHL. Right. For Tage, it took longer. It took much longer. And yet, I could see that he was every bit as talented as those guys, and, different skill sets maybe, but every bit as talented. And through that duration, you can second guess yourself at times. You can wonder if you're going to get to where you suspected you might get to. And then after scoring 38 goals and whatever number of points he had, having time to reflect over that in the summer, and then coming in now and doing what he's done just in the last little bit, I think he's coming to the realization, like, hey, I am a top player. I can be a top player immediately right now. I don't have to wait any longer. And that was a big part of our conversations a year ago. Mm-hmm. I had lots of talks with him early in the season last year saying, Tage, you've done all the work necessary. You are an NHL goal scorer. Now the only thing left is to score.
Mhm.
You can't work any harder and commit any longer than you have. You're a scorer. So, and it was almost like a release for him. And now that you accomplish that, it's another level of release. His self-image, self-projection, is now accurate, that he's, a handful at the NHL level, an imposing player. And he's, I think, getting acclimated, accustomed to that and having fun with it.
I think last night is a great example of that, right? Because the first goal is a bazooka. It's the stuff you expect from, a 6'7" dude. But those other two goals, those are handsy. Those are goal scorer goals that you typically see from guys who are 7, 8, 9 inches shorter than him, right? So is that something that he's developed, that sort of the ability in tight, the confidence to go in there and kind of and make those moves? Like, is that something you saw from him even when you had him at the program? That
he probably did that to fault at the program.
Mhm.
He, I talk a lot, and guys, they're trying to score the highlight goal or the pretty goal. And then you have the goal scorer that just keeps shooting the puck. Alex DeBrincat comes to mind. Just give me the puck and shoot it.
Mhm.
It's off my stick before it even gets on my stick. I just want to score. And then, at the other end of the spectrum are the guys that toe drag and actually try to, carry it all the way into the net and tuck it in. And Tage had that confidence. So there's not an overall negative to it, I guess, or a
Mhm.
long-term negative to it, because you have confidence in your skill. And so, yes, at the national team, I thought Tage was guilty of that then as a 16-year-old. You're going to give up 20 goals a year just because you're trying to score the perfect goal every time
Mhm.
come down.
Right.
You can actually rip it through the defenseman and score a goal right now immediately. And so as a visual, a player, the pure and natural goal scorers feel that I can score the goal anywhere. I can score it shooting through two defenders and pick my corner. The other guy says, I need to get around the defenseman, then get to the goalie, then I can work on scoring the goal. And it's just a different mindset. And like I said, having worked with or been around, Alex DeBrincat with Chicago, that's a perfect example. He's ready. As soon as that puck is coming toward his stick, he believes he can find a way to score right now.
Yeah.
And Tage is getting that. And then that's been a push, from us as coaches to him, catch and release, because you're giving the goalie too much of an opportunity to get ready and set for your shot. And he's done that. He's done that better.
So somebody a little in a completely different space in their development, Jack Quin sits a couple games and then seems like he comes back a different player. I think I forgot, you said he was like a honing torpedo, I think was your quote when he came back. What leads to that? What's the switch that went off when you see a young player
it's exciting. It's definitely exciting. I use the term homing torpedo. I remember saying that about him last season when we sent him down to Rochester. Said, this kid's like a homing torpedo. You sit and have a meeting with him and point out a couple things, and he just zeroes right in on it, and he's off. And he's not going to stop until he gets it done. So very intuitive guy for a young guy. We felt the start of the year, it was a little bit overwhelming the first couple of games. You go from NHL preseason to NHL regular season. That actually is a monumental jump.
Mhm.
Yeah.
When you're a young guy. Excuse me, because your rosters in preseason, the NHL are filled with lots of young guys, American League players that are on their way to the American League, and then veteran players that are, somewhat going through the motions, with some, attention to maybe not getting hurt, not pulling a groin, just to get ready gradually for the regular season, knowing they're going to have to turn it up in mid-October or opening night. And so for opening night in the NHL, it was such a huge jump for Jack. It caught him off guard. I think. He played the first couple, and then we thought, sitting down with Kevin Adams and myself, the rest of the coach, we thought, hey, this is an opportunity. He could step back for a game or two and decompress from this. And we felt it would, the way he is, it would help him. And it certainly has. He came back from that, and he's been better every game from the standpoint of looking more comfortable, even stronger.
What's the messaging there with a player like that when you are saying, all right, let's get you some distance, let's take a breather here, especially a guy like that who seems like he cares, certainly cares, and maybe cares a little bit more than most. Like how do you deliver that, especially early in the season, to a guy like that?
Well, that's the messaging is different for every player and for every situation. There's always unique attributes to it. But for Jack, I think he only played 2 games last season. So much easier for him to accept stepping back, sitting in the press box, or being being scratched from the lineup than obviously a player older. And we felt we had built up enough relationship, enough trust in a relationship with him, between myself and really Kevin Adams, our general manager, discussing, having conversation with him last year, through training camp, even from the point we drafted him a couple of years ago. We built a relationship that we felt, he trusts us, that we have his best interest in mind in decisions we're making, because we want him. We see how talented he is, and we want him to be successful sooner than later. And I think that made it easy for us to approach him and say, hey, we're going to hold you out for the next 2 games. And I told him that it'll be a couple games. And then you're going to be right back in there. And this is not I guess what we wanted to do was make sure that it wasn't a threatening situation to him.
Right.
So we preface it that way. We said, hey, you're going to step back for a couple, but it's not going to be much, because we need you back in there. We want you back in there. We actually think this is a good opportunity to just decompress for a moment before you get your next game in.
Sean and I were just talking about just the different personality approaches of coaches in the different styles, and how they all can succeed. You see what Jim Montgomery's doing with Boston, with the same crew that Bruce Cassidy had. Bruce is having success in Vegas with a different, he's certainly a different kind of coach. We were talking about, Mitch Marner and kind of some of the controversy or whatever that's surrounding how he's being handled. And I came, as we were talking about this, and then, I was reading some stuff, some coverage. You had a quote that said, your approach is about creating, I love that, creating a challenging environment, not a threatening one. I think that's probably a fine line. So I would love for you to kind of expound on that. What does that look like when you're dealing with the player? You have to correct things. You can't, players can't do whatever they want out there. How do you walk that fine line between challenging a player and or making sure that they don't feel threatened?
Well, that is about as deep a question as I've ever had, honestly, because it is everything you do, you're riding that fine line in the position of being a head coach. How you walk in a room, your mannerisms, how you talk, your verbiage, your eye contact, no eye contact. Everything is.
Yeah.
Mostly, fitted in the context, I guess, of, and I've mentioned this a lot, even to our media, there's 50 things in a game I could react on. If you just think of fans watching the game, you can get frustrated with this or that or this. And, as a head coach, I can't, you can't overreact, and you get in trouble overreacting, trying to react to everything.
Yeah.
So, part of that fits with creating a challenging environment, not a threatening environment, is how you react to things and what you react to. And do you overreact? We've had, even a disgruntled player, you don't want to overreact. You don't want to take things personal. You don't want to make it a personal situation. It's just, hey, you have a player that overreacts, and you know what? I've had plenty of players that overreacted. It's going to happen. It's part of our job. Let's just discuss it, talk about it, and move on. Make sure that guy knows we actually support him, even though he might have lost some emotional control and didn't operate the way we had hoped. But hundreds of incidents come to mind. Again, even, your post game, how you speak to your team, how you speak to your team the next day after a game, win or loss, are areas that you really, we look at and say, okay, are we crossing the line? Is this going to be perceived as threatening rather than challenging? And then again, over the years, the hindsight of coaching over the years is what, what I guess it's, I've got a lot of experience making errors in that
Right. That's right.
over the years.
That's
I
right.
mean, it's,
Yeah.
it's true. It's a
Yeah.
fact.
Yeah.
You push a guy too hard, or you say things the wrong way, and the guy instantly feels threatened. And you see it in their mannerism. You see it in their performance. They play not to make a mistake rather than immerse in the moment. And, this is a unforgiving business, as we all know. These guys are critiqued and criticized often and regularly. So it's they can feel threatened at any moment. So it
Mhm.
is a very, very fine line. I can't really explain it, but it happens in everything you do. You got to ask yourself that question, especially when you're around your team.
Is
Are there
there
strategies? I was just going to follow up. Are there strategies like I don't talk to the team after a game, or that guardrails you've put up so that you can protect yourself from overreacting?
Well, one of the simple things in hockey is when the coach walks in the locker room and he's going to show a video. Think about if you lost the game, what video is going to go up on that screen in front of the team.
Mm.
So, there's a moment there. Is it going to be threatening, or is it going to be challenging?
Mhm.
And we pay a lot of attention to things like that. And you have decisions to make as a coach. What clips you show, what angle you take, what initiative you're taking, and your tone and everything else. So yeah, there's a lot of subtleties, I guess.
Mhm.
Hard to quantify.
Yeah.
But you over the years, you develop a feel.
Right.
You learn to, through that, again, unfortunately making mistakes, but that was part of the beauty for me of coaching a long time at a level not in the NHL.
Mhm.
Is, you had opportunity to try stuff that you just couldn't try in the NHL. You just can't
Right.
Yeah.
try. The NHL is not a league of innovation. Most of the innovation is outside, and then brought in later. And that's what we've seen, an influx of that in the last 10 years in our sport, or in the NHL, I should say. So I was grateful to have lots of years outside the league before I, got my shot as a head coach in it, would help me.
Well, I mean, that's the natural follow-up to that is like, what is the influx of things you've seen brought from the outside world and into the NHL?
Well, just let's take, for example, the influence. 10, 12 years ago, the 30-year-old player in the NHL was the guy getting all the money and
Mhm.
getting the next big contract. And now it's a 23-year-old.
Right.
And so what's happened there is the leverage in the league shifted from, the 30-year-old and let's face it, the physically your body at 30, as you age, this is a young man's sport. So the leverage was, in those hands. And if you think of that, then the agents, that's where they were, that's the players that were being signed to the big contracts. So
Right.
that's the ones that were paid attention to. And when it flipped, and the younger guys, those were the guys that were used to skills coaches and different types of practices and different, um, extra different stuff. And that really shifted the whole game. And obviously
Mhm.
the player agents had to shift then too.
Mhm.
And they went into more heavy recruiting of kids that weren't even in the league, knowing that, bigger money was going to players at a younger age. So just the whole influence structure of the NHL changed. Just incredible how much it changed, really in the last 7, 8 years based
Mhm.
on that, based on where the dollars have gone to the age group that it's gone. Those players have now, they influence the league much greater than the older guy at this point.
You mentioned you said something was hard to quantify. Here's another thing that's maybe kind of hard to quantify. How do you deal with making sometimes the right choice in a moment on a given day maybe isn't the right choice for a week down the line or a month down the line or 6 months down the line and vice versa? Like how do you balance that, making the right choice as a coach in the moment in a given situation versus, thinking with, 2 eyes ahead to the future?
Yeah, I don't know if I have the answer to that, but I will tell you how I process that. And you are always coaching to win your next game.
Mhm.
So you're thinking and strategizing, okay, how do we win tomorrow's game? But you have 70 more games left. and you know your team needs to be better as the season moves along. Your players need to be better. Your team needs to be better. So you're balancing those two. There was a quote that I really loved about, I read a lot of Phil Jackson when I was younger. And one, he said, I'm not a win at all cost guy. I'm not going to sell my soul to win, basically. And I know that, when you win at all costs, it was almost like the other side of it was you're jeopardizing long-term potential as well. So for us, even with the Sabres, we go out and try to win every game. We owe that to our fans, and I owe that as a coach to our players. But we also know that we need to get better as a team. So you're balancing decisions that I need to get young guys playing against top stars in the league, even though they're probably more vulnerable than maybe a more seasoned guy. But I need this guy to have experience, because in 2 months from now, he can improve way more than player B, who's been in the league for 7, 8, 9, 10 years. And so you're balancing the short-term gain of a win with the long-term gain of more wins, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I always looked at it where, my priority is win more, not win at all costs today. And, and that was a tough thing in Buffalo, because they've been not in the playoff for so long. They're like, just get me to the playoffs.
Yeah. They're like, we can worry about,
and
win more now.
It's like, we're working toward the playoffs, but I'm not going to make decisions based on just trying to get to the playoffs. I want to win in the playoffs. I want to make sure we become a better team when we do get to the playoffs. And Kevin Adams has been, thinks and processes the same way. So does our owner, Terry Pagula. So, that's, I guess, you are trying to win tomorrow's game, but you are balancing it out. We want to be better and win more games down the road. So if that helps bring a little bit of clarity, and then everything falls in line from your decisions from that point, is how I find it and how we operate.
Who else you reading besides Phil Jackson to get better?
Lots of business books. I love business books. Geez, you stumped me, but I got stacks of books at home that I just love going through. Even I'll go through them and I'll highlight them, and then over the summertime I'll go through all my highlights and zip through, book after book, and it's enjoyable, and there's a lot of good reading out there.
You mentioned players who, maybe you're going to give them exposure to top guys on the other team, with the thought that this is what they're going to need to face down the road. Is Dylan Custance one of those guys? I mean, he's a lot of people expected a jump from him, and we've seen signs of it early, haven't we?
Yeah, there's been lots of signs. He's bigger, he's stronger. I should say he's thicker, he's heavier, he's stronger. The shot he scored on last night, he would have been one of those guys that probably wouldn't have believed he was in a scoring area that far away from the net. He came off the wing and just ripped one over Nedeljkovic's shoulder. It was just a spectacular shot in goal. And I don't know if he would have believed he was in a scoring position, toward the end of last year. He does now. And so yes, we can see continued growth in him, and he is ultra competitive. So he's never satisfied, which is a nice attribute to have. So he, every day for him, it's about finding another way to get better. And there's, as good as he is, there's massive growth potential with him.
Yeah. Well, Don, great to see you. Great catching up. Always a fun conversation. Thanks for doing this.
You're welcome, guys.
Yeah.